It was a typical evening in the small town of Millfield, with the sun slowly setting behind the mountains and the last light of day casting long shadows across the streets. Sarah had just finished her shift at the local diner and was walking home, her mind preoccupied with thoughts of the upcoming weekend. As she turned onto her street, something caught her eye in the distance. At first, she thought it was just a trick of the fading light, but as she drew closer, she realized with horror that it was a figure stumbling towards her. It was a man, or at least it had been. Now, his skin was a sickly gray and seemed to hang off his bones. His eyes were vacant, and his arms hung limply at his sides. Sarah took a step back, but the zombie continued to approach, his gait uneven and jerky. She tried to scream, but her throat felt tight and constricted. With no other option, she turned and ran, the sound of her own footsteps echoing in her ears. She didn't dare look back until she reached her front door, slamming it shut behind her and locking it with shaking hands. As she leaned against the door, trying to catch her breath, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, watching and waiting. She knew that the zombie was just the beginning of something much more sinister. And she was afraid that it was only a matter of time before the town was overrun with the walking dead. Sarah's mind was racing with questions. How could this happen in their peaceful town? How many more were out there? Was she the only one who had encountered one? She knew that she needed to warn others and find a way to fight back. She quickly grabbed her phone and dialed 911. After explaining the situation to the operator, she was told that there were reports of similar sightings across the county. The operator advised her to stay inside and lock all the doors and windows. As she hung up the phone, Sarah's mind was racing. She needed to warn her friends and family and figure out a plan of action. She decided to call her best friend, Alex, who lived just a few blocks away. "Alex, have you seen anything strange lately?" Sarah asked as soon as Alex answered. "No, why? What's going on?" Alex responded, concern in her voice. "I just saw a zombie on my way home from work. It was stumbling towards me, and I barely made it back to my house in time. I called 911, but they said that there have been other sightings. We need to be careful and stay inside," Sarah explained, her voice shaking. Alex was silent for a moment before responding, "Okay, I'll lock all the doors and windows. Do you need me to come over?" Sarah thought for a moment before responding, "No, it's okay. I'm going to try to reach out to some other friends and family and make sure they're okay. We'll regroup tomorrow and figure out what to do next." As Sarah hung up the phone, she realized that the nightmare was just beginning. The town was under attack, and they needed to band together to survive. Sarah spent the rest of the night trying to reach out to her friends and family, warning them of the zombie sightings and urging them to stay inside. Some of them brushed it off as a prank or a joke, but others shared similar stories of strange and unsettling encounters. As the night wore on, Sarah's anxiety grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting to strike. She couldn't sleep, and every creak or rustle outside made her jump. When dawn finally broke, Sarah was exhausted but determined. She knew that they needed to come up with a plan of action and find a way to fight back against the zombies. She contacted Alex, and together they called for a meeting with their friends and family in the town square. They gathered in a circle, each person sharing their own stories of zombie sightings and close calls. Some had even lost loved ones to the undead. As they spoke, Sarah could feel the tension in the air. Fear, anger, and desperation mixed together as they searched for a way to fight back. Someone suggested gathering supplies and weapons, while another proposed barricading themselves inside buildings. But Sarah had a different idea. "We can't just hide and wait for the zombies to come to us," she said. "We need to take the fight to them. We need to find out what caused this and stop it before it's too late." Her words were met with nods of agreement, and they began to plan their next move. They decided to split up into groups and search for any clues or information that could lead them to the source of the outbreak. Sarah knew that it was a risky move, but she couldn't bear the thought of just waiting for the zombies to come to them. They needed to be proactive and take control of the situation before it was too late. As the group set out, Sarah's mind raced with questions. What had caused the outbreak? Was it a virus, a curse, or something else entirely? And most importantly, could they stop it before it was too late? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the town of Millfield would never be the same again. Sarah's group consisted of herself, Alex, and two other friends, Mike and Rachel. They decided to start their search at the old abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. It was a known hotspot for strange and shady activities, and they hoped it would hold some answers. As they approached the factory, they could see that something was off. The windows were boarded up, and there was a strange smell coming from inside. They cautiously approached the door, weapons at the ready, and pushed it open. What they saw inside was beyond anything they could have imagined. The factory was filled with test tubes, beakers, and other scientific equipment. And in the middle of the room was a table with a body lying on it. As they approached, they could see that the body was covered in strange markings and tattoos. And as they got closer, the body began to stir. Sarah aimed her weapon, ready to defend herself, but the body sat up and spoke. "Please, help me," the person groaned. "I'm not a zombie. I'm a victim." The group was stunned. They had never encountered anything like this before. The person explained that they had been kidnapped by a group of scientists who were experimenting with a new type of virus. The virus was meant to create super soldiers, but instead, it had turned the test subjects into mindless zombies. The group was horrified at what they had heard, but they knew that they needed to act fast. They had to stop the scientists before they could create any more zombies. They quickly gathered any evidence they could find and called the police. As they waited for the authorities to arrive, Sarah and her friends knew that they had made a difference. They had uncovered the truth behind the zombie outbreak, and they had stopped it from spreading any further. But even as they celebrated their victory, they knew that there were still many unanswered questions. Who were the scientists? Why were they doing this? And most importantly, how many more victims were out there? Sarah and her friends knew that the fight was far from over. They had uncovered a terrifying conspiracy, and they were the only ones who could stop it. But they were ready. They were determined. And they would do whatever it takes to save their town from the horrors that lurked in the shadows. Sarah and her friends left the factory, feeling a sense of small relief that they had finally found all the evidence they needed to possibly stop the zombie outbreak. But as they made their way down the road, they could feel a sense of unease growing within them. Something didn't feel right. As they turned to look back at the factory, they saw a new creature emerge from the shadows. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a monstrous zombie with razor-sharp claws, jagged teeth, and glowing eyes. Sarah and her friends knew that they had to act fast, but the creature was too fast, too strong, too intelligent. Its movements were too unpredictable, and its attacks too ferocious. The group fought with all their might, but their weapons were useless against the creature's impenetrable skin. It was as if the creature had been specifically designed to withstand any attack. One by one, Sarah's friends fell to the ground, their bodies writhing in agony as the creature's razor-sharp claws sliced through their flesh. Sarah fought bravely, but she was no match for the monster's strength and intelligence. As she lay dying on the ground, Sarah knew that she had failed. The zombie outbreak would continue, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She could feel the cold darkness closing in around her, knowing that she was facing a fate far worse than death. And as the last bit of light faded from her eyes, Sarah knew that she had become just another victim of the zombie outbreak. Another casualty in a war that could never truly be won.